Yes, so I think we're live. Let me just double check.
Okay.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much to Badur for joining me this afternoon, or more this evening for you because it's pretty late, right?
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Amazing. So before we start, as some of you might know, this month we are sponsored by Aavegotchi, who are an on-chain collectible ghost staked with Aave's interest generating A tokens. You can compete for player rewards by earning XPs. You can level up and you can increase the rarity of your Aavegotchi friend. It is a concept and a project that is owned by the community, and Aavegotchi is governed by the Aavegotchi DAO and the native eco governance token Ghost. You can summon your first Aavegotchi today, and you can join the future of DeFi staked NFT avatars. As usual, we would leave the Discord and the Aavegotchi website in the comments below this live. So yeah, so here we go. Let's get started. Thanks so much for being here with me again. It's a real pleasure to have you here. Tubadur is co-founder of Metapurse. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure, sure. There's not too much to intro, and in a weird sense, that's great because Tubado didn't exist before April of 2020. So as a personality, as someone in this space, there's not much to introduce myself with, but the amount of work I've been able to do, the number of people I've been able to meet has been incredible. So I suppose my profile would be that of someone who stumbles upon one interesting thing after another in the metaverse is the closest thing I can come to it. But some of those interesting things are having worked with the excellent team at Lendroid in trying to craft leasing contracts for NFTs for the first time. With Whale Street, who are right now working on a beautiful blend of NFTs and DeFi in making massive whale swaps happen. And then, of course, there's Metapurse, which is practically the culmination of all of the interactions I've had with artists and creators and a lot of collectors even in this space. And it's sort of it's the brainchild of Metabowen, who has been collecting NFTs since late 2016. He's got the largest collection of NFTs by value in the world, and down the line somewhere we realized that his thesis on NFTs and mine sort of matched, and so Metapurse was born as an NFT fund and a production house. And by production, I mean a sort of an entity which creates not just collects NFTs, but also creates beautiful experiences around them, like the B20 project. So that's what I do now.
Yeah, and we'll definitely dive into B20 because I'm very curious to know a lot about
Okay.
it. Yeah, so you touched on, well, you gave a bit of a an intro. I was curious to know and to start from like the very beginning. Like, when did your NFT journey start, and how did you come about the community?
It's weird, right? Like with everything crypto, I didn't immediately take to NFTs or crypto as soon as I heard about it. Unlike a lot of you, I mean, unlike a lot of the people I meet in the community, including probably yourself, you saw NFTs as an idea and you said, that's a great idea, and I'm jumping into it. Whereas I was first exposed to NFTs way back in 2017. I just didn't get it at the time. I fancied myself as a sort of a DeFi nut in a sense. I was very interested in financial, underpinnings of how the world works and how financial ecosystems exist and so on and so forth. I couldn't really grasp the concept of NFTs. But then a few years later, uh, the pandemic sort of pushed me inward, and I discovered, to my utter surprise, that NFTs is the community and the world I've been waiting for all along. because I am inherently a communicator, a writer. I use words to make a living and also to express myself. And let's be honest, there's not too much color in DeFi or in crypto in general. Whereas NFTs make everything so much more vivid, so much more visible. And I first sort of felt that spark in an async art auction. And I believe the pieces going under the gavel at that time were Parks, The Tribe, and
Hmm.
the other one, I think it's Day Night. Oh man, I immediately forgot. Yeah, these two pieces, and both of them
Yeah.
Metacoven bought. But sitting in on these two pieces in being so close to the art and to the artists themselves and to the collectors, that really sort of something clicked in my head, and I realized this is where I needed to be. So that's how my NFT journey sort of started. The people I met after that, purely serendipitous, right? I wrote my first piece on that async art auction in Cent, and like a lot of people in this space,
Yeah.
my NFT journey began on Cent, and Matthew was a bit of a catalyst in that. So we started talking, and then the weekly whip meetup became one of my favorite watering holes. I basically started going to the whip, and I never left. And now I hang around to the extent that they call me. I'm like furniture there almost. So they've now made me a team member in that sense. I'm a very proud part of the WIP crew because I love talking about them. I love writing about the phenomena and the people that I see in the WIP. And that's basically how my NFT journey was catalyzed.
Nice, nice. So actually, I was on the Metapurse website today, and I was reading your blog posts. Is it you that writes the blog posts? Because you just mentioned that they're very well written, and I honestly I have to give you, like, if it's you, it's so much credit because they're very very interesting to read. I was very captured by them.
So thank you. Do you mean the ones on in the Substack? I had a lot of
Yes.
help with those, but yeah. The Substack one, I have to give credit to the Metacast team. They are excellent writers. I've never felt that kind of passion with anyone else about the NFT space, and to be able to talk about these concepts before even anybody else has. I think full credit to the Metacast team for whatever you read in Substack. I just go in there and dabble a little bit, and that's pretty much all I do.
Amazing. Well, I also obviously, talking about Metapurse, which launched in September of last year. I
Hmm.
was reading a little bit, about your vision for this project, and how you talk about art, which should be for everyone, and the creativity that should be for
Hmm.
everyone. And I just love to know more about this, and in general, like your vision for this project and um, what your goal is.
Sure. One of the driving impetuses for Metapurse was obviously around art. Now, Metacoven has been collecting all sorts of NFTs, gaming NFTs, and mostly land, because he feels
Mm.
very strongly about being able to own a piece of land which is going to be yours for eternity. Because land is one of those things which ties us very closely to the world we live in, right? And increasingly, all over the world, countries are going more authoritarian. Our control over our finances, over our identity, over our land keeps sort of reducing in a sense. So land was very close to Metacoven's heart, but at the same time, art started to take on a lot of prominence, because both of us believe that artists are going to be the catalysts to bring this entire vision mainstream, right? So that has been a driving force for Metaverse, and a lot of the causes that we wanted to champion, in a sense, trying to create a more equal world, a more equitable world, whether we're talking about financial systems or opportunities, or in any other sense of the term. Artists and NFTs are going to sort of be the key. and everything we've done since September has been around these themes. For instance, we feel BLM, the Black Lives Matter movement, very viscerally because of the kind of background we also come from. We find gender equality a very, very strong issue because that's something we're fighting back home as well. So these things are best expressed and best fought for through art and artists. So Metapurse has sort of always strongly championed these causes through art.
That's very interesting, and I would really love to expand on this, especially especially talking about um, the Beeple project and the Beeple 20 collection and your event that launched on Saturday, this last Saturday on the 23rd. Which
Oh,
I think was
yeah.
one of the biggest, cultural projects in the metaverse to date. So it was truly amazing to see it happen. Would love to hear more about the event in general, how it came about, but also
Oh,
now that that it happened as well, like how it went and yeah.
yeah. I'm still recovering from that, to be honest. I mean, we hope that we really hope that it would take, but none of us expected this sort of an overwhelmingly positive response, right? And which is why we can't take a lot of credit for these kind of things because if say 100 people show up or 200 people show up, you can take a little bit of credit. I mean, we put a good event together. The idea was nice, the colors were good, and the organization was fine. But when close to or more than 1,000 people show up, across virtual worlds, and you're overwhelmed with support and congratulations, then you know that you've created something that's bigger than yourself, and you can't really take credit for it. It means that you've stumbled upon an idea that actually works, that the metaverse
Yeah,
has been wanting to see for a while, and that's what B20 is
yeah,
about. I spoke about art and financial systems as some of the impetuses that made Metaverse, right? B20 sort of represents that. B20 is the first public art project of the metaverse, and the reason we made it that is because um, think about it this way. Historically, in ancient civilizations, art always used to be open, right? Used to be accessible to everybody. But you're thinking about ancient temples in South India or in Rome or any of these civilizations, Egypt, for instance. But slowly, over the generations, art started to become more closed, more behind the doors, more behind walls, locked up, because there is an element of economy, of finance, of profitability, which prevents good art from being widely accessible. So we wanted to break that model in a sense, and we could obviously throw in a lot of money into something and open up a museum, but that's only half the job done. You can only make something truly sustainable if you also make it financially and economically viable. So we felt that if we got into a project and we wanted people to appreciate art and access art for a really long time, we also had to create incentives around it so that it sort of
yeah,
becomes self-sustaining. So what we did with the B20 is, and by the way, the B20 project is bigger than Metapurse for sure. But the real idea behind it is that it's bigger than Beeple even, right? So there's a very strong reason why we felt Beeple
yeah,
was the ideal, the perfect fit for this kind of a project, because he, in his thinking, is very, very crypto, very metaverse. He's created art just for the sake of creating for more than 5,000 days, more than 13 years, which is incredible. And the other part is he's always spoken about decentralizing and democratizing access to his work, which really spoke to us. So he was a perfect candidate in that sense. Uh, so we took all of the 20 pieces of his art. By the way, acquiring those pieces of art was a story in itself, right? It was intense. 2 days of furious bidding and buying
yeah,
on Nifty Gateway, which is a highly, highly competitive platform. And it's
yeah.
because we had this sort of conviction that we were creating something bigger, that we were able to go through with it and sort of put in bids in excess of $160,000 for some pieces. So we got those art pieces, and instead of locking them up in a vault, we created giant and grand museums across metaverse worlds in CryptoVoxels, Somnium Space, Decentraland. You should see Decentraland, by the way. It's incredible. All of these were created by voxel architects. And we also have one in Sandbox. It couldn't be part of the bundle because the world isn't launched yet, but that's going to be part of the experience as well. That's going to launch quite soon. So we created these worlds. We put the art in them. We had original soundscape from Blau. We bundled all of those things, and we created keys to this bundle. So
Yeah.
instead of trying to lock it up and sort of sharding it in a sense, what we did was we kept the experience open, and we sharded or split the ownership of that museum. It's like you're walking into the Museum of Modern Art. Not only do you feel a sense of ownership, but you can also own a share of that museum yourself. So when you walk into it, you walk into
Yeah.
it saying, I not only feel like I own this, but I do actually own a piece of this. So it's in short, it's open experience and collective ownership of the metaverse. That's what the B20 project represents. And we are so glad, in Metapurse that the idea took root so strongly and across the board, right? With people, with all of the wonderful uh, stakeholders that worked with us. Metacast did such amazing communications, and this beautiful website that you see, all of the content that you see, they are behind it. Andrew Steinwald, Matthew, Brooke Walter, and these wonderful people worked on this. Grow Your Base was instrumental and in helping us with the tokenomics of it. John from Grow Your Base, Tabby, and so on. We have the amazing Leandro, George, and so many others from Voxel Architects who built it. The entire technology was supported by the team at Whale Street, which is V, who's a tech lead at Lendroid as well as Whale Street. We had Praveen Praveka, Dinesh, who worked on the promos. You must have heard of Paradox.
Hmm.
He's the metaverse cinematographer. He flew everywhere, took the shots, and created promos himself. So we had all of these people work with us, and I would say the best part of this is that they bought into it as well. So none of
Yeah.
they could have walked away with Ethereum or USDC or something, right? But they rather chose to take a piece of history with them and to carry home B20s, the B20 tokens instead. So um, we love that the idea has taken, but we have to be honest and say that we can't take more than 10%, 20% of the credit for this having worked. It's more a phenomena that had a life of its own.
Which I think is, I guess, the even, bigger beauty of it all is that so many people and communities and members of the NFT and the crypto art space were involved in this and decided to see a common vision, which I think is actually very, very inspiring and really beautiful to hear, to be honest. So I honestly am amazed by the project and by the vision that that you guys have all cumulatively um, managed to put in place. And yeah, like I was I was truly amazed when I was reading about it, because it's definitely something that interests me as well, like personally, but also on a wider scale, even for the whole of the crypto art community as well. And on this, I wanted to ask you as well, like what what do you think um is next for you as like Metapurse, but also like where do you see your role in this community expand, like on this basis,
Mm.
on what you've just created? Like how do you see this expanding in the future as well?
Wow, I mean that's a very important question, but I realized very recently that I hadn't thought beyond the launch of B20. To be honest, uh, one I had no idea how it was going to go, and I had no plans for what happens beyond this. So that is a bit of a tough question. But what I do know for sure is that now that we know that an idea like this works, we're going to go fire on all cylinders and try and see how we can make this better. The B20
Yeah.
model is the first of many in my head. It's the first kind of a project of this scale, and the next one will have to sort of take on a completely tangential turn, but improve some aspects of this. It could come with better tokenomics. It can come with a richer experience. It will tie back to B20 and the B20 token. Definitely, that part is for sure. But it will take this. It will make sure that the B20 itself, this $2.7 million project, is a first step towards something else, because we're not there yet, right? I mean, we've started with a certain goal, and when we started it, we thought that we might be able to make a small dent in the world, maybe change a little bit here and there. But now we get this feeling that we can change a lot more than just do a little bit here or there. Maybe we can make a real difference, some sort of a change which affects the entire immunity, I mean, NFT and crypto community, but then radiates outwards as well. So we
Yeah.
feel this sense of excitement and also a sense of responsibility. So now that we've got this thing, the most responsible thing to do, the how do I say? Yeah, the best thing to do would be to not lose the momentum, to not lose the opportunity that we have at hand, and to create something even richer, even better for the community. So that's what we're going to work at, and uh, again, around whatever we create next, artists are going to be at the core of this. And this time, in my mind, it's going to be crypto native artists. We needed to bring in people
Yeah.
who wasn't crypto native as such into it, because we wanted to test this concept out, and to see if it works or not. It has to be done at scale. It's like you're
Yeah.
trying to make the first ever car model or something, or the first ever computer. uh, you'll have to bring in really big parts, right? Because you don't know how everything fits together. So that's kind of what B20 was. We needed the biggest artist out there. We needed massive lands. We needed grand gestures and all of that stuff. Going forward, we can make it more intricate, more complex, and see how it can evolve from what it is already. But it is going to have a whole bunch of crypto native artists. A lot of them whom I see on your timeline uh, should be part of it.
That's good to know. I was about to ask you, in fact, when you were talking about it, and the concept of scale, I think is very important, and definitely the Beeple drop was a good way to, make a lot of noise, and be heard in the community for the concept that you wanted to create. And now being able to apply this to a lot of, different, like, communities, even niche artists. I think it's very interesting, and it's definitely something that I'm curious to see how it will fold out. I wanted to ask you around, like, your role as collectors, and I guess, like,
Mm,
in a way, even like the role of the collector in the community in general. How do you see that, growing or evolving in the future? Because obviously, like, anybody can collect NFTs in this community, right? Which is the
correct.
beauty of it.
Mm,
um, Anybody can be a collector, which doesn't really happen in real life. So, and
mm,
you as Metapurse, and you personally as well, have, I guess, kind of even brought this collector idea much further than what it was. So yeah, so I'm just wondering, like, how you think
yeah.
the role will evolve, and even whether, you're also maybe speaking to more collectors like you who would like to embark in this journey that you're creating.
No, that's so true, and it's very astute of you to have observed that, right? Because you've been in the space for a while. You must have seen the role of collectors sort of evolve even in this short period. Because I think a collector's role evolves along with how the ecosystem itself evolves. For the longest time, all you could do with NFTs was to buy them and maybe sell them at a later date. That's starting to change, right? With projects like Avagotchi, your sponsors this time, with NBA Top Shot and so many other things with Animoca brands. I mean, whether it's the F1 Delta Time or Sandbox, all of these
Yeah.
gaming worlds are starting to come alive. NFTs are starting to come alive, and in a sense, they're moving away from just collectibles to things that can give you an experience in the metaverse. And I think collectors become agents of change in that sense. So where it was enough for a collector to just provide a little bit of liquidity and some sort of capital to
Yeah.
these NFT projects, they will need to evolve to a point where they push the ecosystem forward in interesting directions. I've mentioned in previous podcasts that say people like Whale Shark, for instance, they have moved the needle forward in trying to do something else with NFTs apart from just collecting and keeping them. So now that's on all of the collectors. I mean, Token Angels, he's another collector. He's a massive fan of CryptoPunks, I think, and also a major art collector. The kind of economic model he created with Matt Kane and his Bitcoin volatility piece, that was so interesting, right? So they need to start looking. They don't need to, and that's the beauty of it. And it's that collectors don't need to. Even Metacoin or Metapurse, the cost of this B20 project, I mean, just to lay it out there, was what, 4,000 Ethereum back
Mhm.
when it was still five to 600, or in that range. So if he had simply held on to his ETH, he'd have been a much richer collector. So none of the collectors actually need to do what they do in this space, but it makes life really interesting, and it makes all of that wealth sort of much more meaningful, because when you can spread around the creation of wealth and sort of distribute that, that is way more satisfying than multiplying your own wealth. And that's what
Yeah.
B20 sort of does, right? I mean, everybody who holds it, and all of the stakeholders that created that project, right? We have 25 people. All of them participate in the process of creating wealth. And it's not just confined to a collector and the artist, or collector and the NFT.
Yeah.
That's where it's all headed, I feel.
Yeah. 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 I completely agree, and I guess like it's also, you know, there's a piece of like inclusivity and
Exactly.
including everyone, rather than like excluding, and letting it be kind of just for the ones who can, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, and think about people like me, right? Like Tubadur. The skill I bring to this space, which is suffused with artists basically, and people who can buy art. I write. My skill practically has no value financially. If you look at it apart from the projects I was working on, for instance, all of the writing or the communicating that I did, before Metapurse, none of it was, uh, to be fair, with a monetary intent either. But none of it, even if I had asked for, would have fetched me any money as such. So we need
Mm.
to create ecosystems for people who bring these supplementary talents, people who can organize, people who can strategize, people who can write, people who can sort of push the brand forward and talk to people and negotiate and communicate. All of these people are as essential to the space as the artists and collectors themselves, and we ought to create an ecosystem for this group of people who will then lift up this core ecosystem and take it to some other interesting place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely agree. And on a, I guess on a much, wider, it comes into play with everything that we've discussed so far. But where do you see the NFT like community in the NFT world evolving this year? Like, what are the kind of like, I guess maybe two or three areas where you would like, or you have a vision where you think the NFT community is going towards, apart from obviously what we've discussed now and what you're building, of course.
Correct. It's hard to see past the B20 buildings because they're so big and tall. They're right in front of my eyes. But yeah, I would say that the NFT community is moving towards experiences. That is the most the safest, most accurate answer I can give right now, because um, that's what the last few weeks itself has proven. uh, the money spent on NFT will start to become old news, will start to become stale news.
Yeah.
The 2.2 million we dropped on people is fading very quickly from memory. So tomorrow there might be a bunch of NFTs sold for 5 million. The day after for 10 million. They might hit the
Yeah.
headlines for a couple of days, but then people have begun to realize that this is typical crypto. This is typical NFT. Nothing much to worry about. But for it to really stick, we will need to move into exciting new projects which promise some sort of a long-term economy. I'm looking quite closely at projects like Axis, for instance. I think they are building interesting worlds. I'm waiting for Sandbox to launch, because that would mean that would attract a really large demographic, which includes even 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds, because that's somewhat sort of similar to the Roblox kind of gaming world. I'm not sure you're familiar. I'm familiar because I have a 10-year-old at home. Otherwise, I would have no idea about that stuff. But that's another interesting area to move into. I am so curious about where art is going. Right. I have no thesis on that matter. All I know is that it's
Mm.
important. But I'm lucky in a sense that I feel myself to be in a very interesting vantage point. I can I can see artists. I can access them today, and uh, based on all evidence so far, they can tolerate me as well. They don't mind speaking with me when I ask them to, and I think that's a very privileged position. And this is one thing I would never want to let go of, because I feel that as long as I'm in this space of accessibility with artists and art, I will at least feel, even if I can't articulate, I'll be able to feel where this space is headed towards. Because this word of this phrase, cultural zeitgeist, right, of basically what this moment in time represents, it's very hard to put your finger in it, but we are already in that space as Metapurse, and I think we're in a very nice place to capture what is going to happen next. So while the wider NFT ecosystem moves towards experiences and richer gaming worlds and so on, art is taking a rather interesting direction again. I see it moving aggressively towards monetization on the one side, and on a parallel side, looking very hard for an alternative economy that
Mm.
doesn't force artists to think about the price tag, and they want a space where they can just create without having to think about either shilling their stuff or trying to create art for somebody else, because that does become a sort of pressure, right? So I think both of these
Yeah.
movements are moving on in parallel, and I'm curious to see which one goes ahead quicker, and even more curious to see where the two of them sort of converge.
Yeah. Yeah. And how, I guess, I have maybe one last question. To be honest, I have a lot more, but I'm conscious of your time as
Go for
well.
it.
But I'm wondering, like, how do you see the the real art world? I get, like, the physical, not the real. Let's say the physical art world, moving more into this digital art world and the community of NFT art in this year and in the coming months, I guess. You talked about experiences, which I think is very
Mhm.
key to art as well, and like bringing, I guess, more experiences, to a like virtual reality, to the digital world, to the community.
Mhm.
So what
Correct.
about physical art, like physical museums or physical collectors? Like, how do you see these two worlds moving closer together?
Let's see. I honestly discovered art only after I came into the NFT space. I have to be honest with that. I wish I had some sort of education in art. I wish I could say I was born with great taste, or that I, I studied the greats since the beginning, but I didn't. And the obvious reason for that is because I felt really removed from artists, because in the real world they're hard to access. You are
Yeah.
only exposed to them via some the occasional billboard, or some news clip somewhere, or some controversy, right? So I'm really far removed from physical art in that sense. I
Mm.
feel NFT art very, very viscerally, very instinctively. And I don't believe that becoming mainstream is any measure of success for NFT art, because I think it can be a self-sustaining world, and it is already a place full of very, very talented artists. And think about it for a second, right? Even the Nifty Gateway drop, the $2.2 million that was spent on people's art could only be possible with someone who had access to a large amount of crypto.
Mm.
Just because Nifty Gateway opened up payments via credit card, nobody would have been able to buy art on that platform in that sense. So there is a lot of capital in the NFT space. There's a lot of talent in the NFT space. And I think the role that most NFT projects must see themselves as is not as somebody who has to go convince the outside world to come in, but rather shine brightly themselves and become beacons. It's just like a beacon in the center of the metaverse, the center of some interesting
Yeah.
corner in the internet. People will come. You don't need to advertise, you don't need to call out to anybody. Just by existing in this crazy world, just by being weird and wild and wonderful, I think it'll attract a lot of mainstream attention.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I agree. That's a very, very nice way to put it. Well, I mean, I'm very inspired by this conversation. So I thank you a lot for everything that you've shared. I think it's truly great what you're building with Metapurse. So congratulations, and congratulations again on the launch of the B20
Thank you.
Metapalooza event.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what's next for you guys. And thanks a lot for being here with me today and chatting to me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. No, love to come back anytime. This was great. Thanks for having me on.
You're always welcome. Come back anytime. Have a good evening. Thanks
You too.
again.
Thanks so much. Bye bye.
Bye.